Welcome to the Creating Wealth Simplified podcast. My name is Lauren Wells, here with my co-host, Chris Seveney. We're committed to providing you with the knowledge required to build wealth through real estate investing. Tired of consuming content about real estate? Stuck in analysis paralysis? Ready to do your first deal? As a member of our community, you will learn how to go from consuming content to taking that first step into the world of real estate investing. Our show is not about getting rich quick, but about providing you with the knowledge you need to take action. Join us as we speak with experienced investors who share action tips on how to escape the corporate world, start a thriving side hustle in the world of real estate, and go beyond your W-2 or 401k. My name is Lauren Wells, and I'm here with my co-host, Chris Seveney. Welcome to the Creating Wealth Simplified podcast, where each week we bring you education and information that is going to help you take your next step in building wealth through real estate. So today we want to talk about when you're starting out, what is the best way to really kick off? Is it passive? Is it in a partnership, or do you go at it alone? So with that being said, Chris, why don't you start off? What are your thoughts?
So this is a great question, because before we hit the record button, you brought up the point of, you hear on a lot of podcasts, people—
You're going to take my point from me?
No, okay, I won't. Sorry, I'll let you say that. I threw me for a curveball, everybody. So to answer the question in as quick as possible without me saying, 1,000 words, I'll try and keep it short. It really depends. And, of course, that's the not stereotype, but that's the answer you hear from a lot of people on a lot of different things. But it's based off your experience and how comfortable you are. Somebody starting out and doing a real estate deal who has no real estate experience compared to, I'll take myself, who, when I started doing my true first deal, I had been in real estate for over 15 years. And I had built, $100 million apartment building. So working on rehabbing a single family property, I had already done that, been there, done that. So it's now just using my own money compared to somebody else. So I guess my answer is going to be, it depends. And we're going to share today with some of the experiences and provide some advice on what you should do. Correct?
Yes. So when we were thinking about today and, what we were going to talk about, I thought this would be a good topic, because when you listen to a lot of podcasts, real estate podcasts specifically, where they're bringing on, expert interviewers and, people to shed light on their journey, it always seems to be like this big, huge, like 0 to, 20 apartments in 1 year, or 5 single family homes within 5 months, and it's this big transformational story. And you never really hear, well, was that like their first deal? Like, was their first deal that first apartment building by themselves? Did they have any help with that? So I think when you're consuming all these podcasts, you might think, okay, so I've consumed a lot of content. Now I have to go invest in a short-term rental, or I have to go invest in a property by myself. And so then you stop, you have that analysis paralysis, because you're thinking of all the things, like what business entity do I set up? Where do I put my bank account? Like all the things, instead of really understanding that there's more than just you going out and doing it on your own as an option to kind of get to where you want to be. So the three that kind of I mentioned really are passive. So investing in a real estate fund, for example, where you are just getting money, investing money, getting a return. There's a partnership where that can be structured a few different ways. And we'll talk about that in a second, really, where you're like mitigating risk. It's it's more risky than being passive, but you're also more involved. And then going at it solo, where you're kind of assuming all the risk and taking on everything yourself. So Chris, let's talk about passive. What are the pros and cons why would someone want to be a passive investor?
I view people with the passive side really who have too much going on in their life. And it's something of, hey, look, I need to put money somewhere. I want to diversify. I really like real estate. And it's a place where I believe I can make, decent returns, somewhat be uncorrelated to the stock market, and invest in a sponsor who has a track record. That's where you see a lot of people invest in the passive side, because contrary to popular belief, every aspect of real estate typically has some type of being active, whether you're trying to find a rental property to buy, which then you might have somebody manage it and still be passive. That still takes work, and you still have to understand the market, trust your agent, which we'll talk about later on.
But that's a great point. Let me stop you there about, and myth, I guess you could say, is that, oh, I just want to be a passive investor, and I'm going to get a whole bunch of short-term rentals. There's a lot of work, coming from someone who has gone that route. There's a lot of work that goes into acquiring, getting them ready, rent ready, managing them. Either you're managing them yourself, or like you said, giving them to a property manager. So I think that is a good point you make about nothing is truly passive. I mean, unless you're investing in like a fund.
Yeah, and perfect example is I've got 2 rentals right now. One of them and I have property managers for both. I just had one tenant move out, and now, they're getting it rent ready, but there's a lot of correspondence back and forth of, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that. Oh, we found this, we found that. So there's still some back and forth that it doesn't take up a ton of time, but it still takes up time, and it actually adds some stress a little bit because of it's like, oh, now I gotta go spend an extra $1,000 here or there. And then in my other one, which is the nightmare that the tenant's destroyed, that I've got the $10,000 bill on, that one you got to be a little more active from, on that as well. But that's once you have them acquired. There's also the acquisition side of things, of how much time you're spending to look at acquiring them, which, some will say, oh, I got to spend that time looking into a fund as well, which you should spend that time looking into. But personally, I think you'd spend a lot more time trying to find a rental than you would a sponsor to invest in a fund.
Yeah. So you're right. That's as well a good point. Lots of good points this morning so far.
I'm glad this is being recorded. So I'm getting credit from you.
Yeah, there you go. You're still putting time into investing or looking at who the sponsor is if you do decide to go fully passive and invest in a fund. So yes, there's that. And I agree with you. It's still significantly less than if you're looking to acquire, a property on your own. So, okay. So would want to do passive. Why wouldn't they?
Somebody who is a control freak. Nobody I know. But yeah, somebody who really wants to be involved, has the time to be involved. When, if you look at how it's structured from a risk return standpoint, typically, if you're going out on it on your own, you can of course make higher returns, but also there's going to be higher risk involved. So if somebody really wants to be active and do it kind of as a side gig, then it still may not hurt to start being passive so you can understand or see how people operate or try and get more information on whatever it is that venture is. But eventually that person, if they really have the desire, they'll want to be a little more active and not just invest in syndications or funds.
Yeah. Okay. So we have there's passive then, low risk or least risk of the 3 options we brought up.
As long as you have a sponsor that is, yeah.
Again, I feel like everything, and a common theme that will probably pop up throughout this is do your due diligence, whether it's on the property or the sponsor. So, but of the 3, passive, partnership, or so, like that would be the lowest risk. And really the biggest factors there are how much time do you have and how much control do you want?
And I'll just explain the risk on that is because you're putting money with a lot of other investors who are buying either one large asset or multiple assets. Yep. So it's more diversified versus putting, you without the experience, because you're starting out, going to do something on your own. So that's why I call it, less risk lower risk than the other avenues of real estate investing we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. So then moving into that kind of segues perfectly into like a partnership. So there's a few ways to structure a partnership. You can either come to the table with all the money and someone has all the expertise and you partner that way, or you could each put in 50% of money. And so I guess that like you just said, when you're in a fund, there's multiple investors, less risk, more diversification, but in a partnership, there is more risk, but it's still less than if you're going at it alone. So things to consider when you are looking at going that route.
Yeah. So of course, due diligence in your sponsor. But one of the things I would say is defining what you want to get out of that relationship and structure it, because for example, when I started doing notes, I did JVs where I was a sponsor and I had people invest. And early on, so when I was getting started, I was looking to, raise money through a joint venture. So for me, what was I looking for was trying to build long-term relationships. So most people at the time would give a 50-50 relationship or 50-50 split. I started out giving 60-40. So I was giving a little bit more and banking on that long-term relationship. And when you look at, I'll say a $50,000 deal that was making, say, 20%, which is 10,000, you're looking at the delta of, instead of getting 5,000 and 5,000, you're getting 4 versus 6. That I viewed that $1,000 as it continued to let me grow my experience, but also build a trust and relationship with somebody who would probably continue to invest with me in the future.
Yeah. So it's really defining on both sides what you're looking to get out of it. I think when it comes to partnerships, really knowing too, like you said, what you want to get out of it, but also so on the other end, you were speaking to like the investor, the person with the experience side. So I'll speak to the person who's new to it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're thinking this would be a better route than, investing in a fund or syndication, typically you're going to want to find someone who resonates with you, has an area of interest that you're interested in. And when I first did JV partnerships, again, being on the other end, newer to this, it was, I want to learn as much as possible from this person. So like, I'm willing to put up the funds in order to learn. Now you have to be careful because I don't feel like all sponsors are created equal. So really being transparent about, hey, like, I want to get into notes. Like I would love to do a JV deal. And this is what I'm hoping to get out of it, so that you not only are learning on top of getting a return. So, again, it's more risk than being passive, but also it gives you kind of I think it's a better gateway into going solo.
Yeah. The challenge that as the sponsor that I started to face was, as I started to grow, I wanted to try and teach as much as possible to people who are investing with me. But if I had, it was one investor per deal, and let's say I had 3 notes in one state that 2 of them were in some form of legal. And I'd want to try and, sometimes get that investor maybe on the call or whatnot. But if the attorney calls me out of the blue and goes through both cases with me, that's not something I'm like, oh, hold on, let me get my partners on the call and so forth. So to try and give them live, interaction was very challenging in the note space. Now, if you're doing it on like a fix and flip where you're giving the money, but you want to learn and you find somebody who's like a contractor and stuff, if you can take the time to be at the job site daily and just watch what's going on, ask for copies of the contracts, understand how the scopes are written, and really understand the schedule and how things work, then yes, that can be extremely beneficial and get a lot of hands-on experience. Note investing is a little tougher to get that hands-on experience.
Yeah.
You can, in a live interaction, you can still get it, but you also want to make sure your sponsor is relaying information to you in a way of, hey, here's what's going on, kind of give you some ideas, what would you do, and kind of do it almost like a create your own adventure book type of story.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of that falls on the, like the investor to, obviously I wouldn't expect you to pick up the phone and be like, hey, I have a call with an attorney, try to get me on it. That would be like above and beyond. But asking all the right questions is like what's most important to learn from any of those experiences. And I think what I see end up happening is, or I think my best tip for people who would be looking to do some sort of JV venture would be to find someone who isn't like selling a membership or a course or a $25,000 mastermind or whatever it might be, because yes, they probably have a ton of experience, or maybe they have a ton of experience, but I feel like the people who maybe have been in the industry 1-2 years longer or less than these other people, but aren't going that route, or it's not a route they want to go, like seeking out the kind of the hidden gems who you can partner with in your kind of area, rather than trying to seek out someone who's, just published a book on note investing or whatever it might be.
The other thing possible too is, as part of a JV, is if you do find a deal and bring a deal to somebody and say, hey, look, I know this note. Here's kind of, I've done some due diligence on it. I've looked at it. I've gone through it. I think kind of maybe the pricing would be in this range. Can you take a look at it and maybe, JV on this deal where I provide some of the funding, but you basically, manage it and kind of, work out some arrangement for profit splits, which again, traditionally is like a 50-50, but maybe you can work something out a little better to you, or even if it's a little better to them, that experience can be, there's a price for that experience. And I think a lot of people forget that. And, if you can go in a deal, partner with somebody, get an education and make a few dollars on it, think about, like you just said, somebody went and spent 25 grand on training. That training's not going to give you a real life experience. If you took 25,000, JV'd with somebody on a note, and let's say you made $1,000 on that deal, but you paid somebody 25,000 in training, at the end of the day, you got 26,000 versus nothing. So, you're already way ahead of that ballgame.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I just think it sets you up better if your goal is to eventually go solo and kind of, or go solo and then become essentially the sponsor. I think that partnerships are a great way to start that. So really finding the right partner, knowing what you want to get out of it, setting the right expectations. And like you said, if you can bring the deal to them, it's kind of like, what are you going to do for them? They're bringing the expertise to the table. So like, how are you going to, other than the funds, what else are you going to do for them? So then how do you decide to make the leap into going solo from
It's confidence. It's really a confidence play is what I think it comes down to for most investors. Interesting story. I used to work with this guy. His name's Brian, not our attorney, Brian. He was a superintendent on job sites, and he looks like Shrek. He was a former Golden Gloves boxer, but this guy was the type of, we all know this type of person who they're crazy. They're a lunatic. And they're just like, they'll go out and do whatever. And literally this guy
I feel like I know someone like that.
Oh, no, God, this guy, no, literally, if you go out drinking with him, just, I'll tell you, just expect to have a rough next day. Leave it that way. But he went and basically, perfect story is we're building a project. And the owner made a comment that we have to have this building done. It was within 2 years, which was almost impossible. He looks at the owner and says, if I get it done in 2 years, I want your Mercedes. To the owner. And the owner looked at him and said, if you get this done in 2 years, I will buy you a Mercedes.
Did you get it done in 2 years?
He got it done in 2 years and got his Mercedes. And
I'm like, I like this guy.
I'm like, oh my God, it's like, so
confidence.
The confidence in this guy was just unbelievable. The confidence in this person. So the reason I tell the story is because he had the confidence. He went out and started his own business. And he was not, and if you know a lot of people who crush it in business, they are not the smartest person. They are not the most educated person. They're the person who has the most confidence. And I share that because I still talk to him now. And, I told him about note investing, and all of a sudden he wants to start getting, asked about getting in notes. And he has a site work company, which is a very difficult type of company to manage. But I say that because that's really what it takes to go out on your own, is that confidence. And how do you get that confidence? I'll ask you, how do you get that confidence?
I think it's surrounding yourself with the right people for me, and lots of experience and time. Yeah, I'd say that for me, that's it. Like surrounding yourself with the people who have the confidence in you, whether like, again, I worked in corporate for a lot of years, just kind of to segue back to that. But, I feel like for a long time, people were like, you're really good. Like, when I first got my first sales job, it wasn't because I thought I would be good at sales. It was because someone came to me and was like, you played sports, you'd be good at sales. And I was like, I don't think so. But he took the chance on me. And then I think I was just told so often, and I see this with athletes that I've coached in the past, the ones that you tell and are kind of hyped up, like this girl's going to go to the Olympics, this girl's really great, really do like, it's like they take that on, and it really helps. It helps with their confidence, and they do become the better athletes. Obviously there's some talent that goes into that, but I think that surrounding yourself with people who see what you might not see, because I feel most people are a lot harder on themselves than they probably should be. So surrounding yourself with the right people, so the right investors, the right, do your networking, I'd say, if you're looking in real estate, and then practice. Like, what is it? Use a line that I was told growing up all the time. Perfect practice makes perfect, practice makes perfect. Well, it was actually a lot longer than that, but I think that little part of it, practice makes perfect.
Yeah, we could talk a whole another episode on confidence. But I'd also question that boss you had, because I used to play sports and you don't want me doing sales. So
I think,
go ahead.
I don't know. I do believe it though. If you ask any
Mm.
hiring manager in tech, it's like athletes, sales. There's like a weird correlation.
The one component I'll add to that, because those are all great topics, putting people around you and stuff, is knowing who to go to for the answer. I think that is a very key component of, you surround yourself with a great team, and you don't have to know everything, and you're not going to know. You're going to know very little when you get started, but knowing if something comes up, okay, in notes, okay, let me ask my servicer about this. Let me ask the attorney about this. Let me ask, 2 other note investors. And that's the one thing I think people should do is collaborate with others in the space as well, but just know who to go to ask them, and don't be shy. And that goes back to confidence, having confidence to ask somebody the question that could potentially be a stupid question.
Yeah. Not being afraid to ask what you would think would be a stupid question, because it's probably not. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I mean, look, as we're growing, we're growing out the team at Seveney, CWS, everyone is very driven, type A go-getters, but we all have like certain strengths where we know like, oh, like, let's go to this person for this. Yeah. And even when you're hiring, you're looking for people that, you can basically trust to do their own thing, with whatever is needed at any time. So it's funny you mentioned that.
Well, no, actually, we are talking about going out on your own.
What did it take for you to go out on your own? And you said confidence. That was your like number one.
So did you do a JV deal here for
I
notes?
did 3 JV deals in notes, and I got a ton out of it. I learned so much about notes, about the acquisition process. So I actually started working for someone for free. Basically, I was like, how can I help, like, want to learn this industry? It wasn't.
So you have a history of that.
I think it's a smart way to go, because a lot of people don't have, might not have the time. They might need the help. And I feel like it was like the perfect partnership. So I learned massive amounts about analyzing tapes, about all the due diligence that goes into it, where to go, what vendors to use. And this was before I even ventured into first. This is when I was looking at seconds. Got a lot of one-on-one time with my sponsor. And then I gained the trust to put funds in and do a JV with him. So, and I actually just closed all 3 of those out. Those notes were sold. So
who was your JV?
Sherman Arnowitz.
Okay. And just so people are aware, it does pay off from starting like working for free for somebody and then eventually potentially growing. Because earlier yesterday, Lauren and I were talking about buying a private island. So, from working for free.
Like clarification, you brought it up. I said, no way. That looks like it's surrounded like by shark infested water. And it's on the Atlantic side. So no waves there. So.
But she's peculiar about the island she's buying. So to give you an idea. No, that's interesting. And I know a few people, for example, like, Jimmy Bateman, who just, hosts a podcast. He's, he brings on investors who have recently got it started as well into the space, and kind of work with him and assist him in managing his portfolio, and the amount of experience they get and from that. And,
it gives you confidence.
Yeah, it gives you the confidence. And again, you're working around somebody day in and day out and having those conversations, and you're getting paid to do it. Whereas a lot of people actually turn around and pay somebody to have those conversations. You're getting paid to learn from those people. Unless
you just do it for free like me.
And the other component to that too is, when you set yourself around somebody who's, or, kind of an entrepreneur, you learn a lot more than just real estate from them. You can learn so many different aspects of,
that's funny that literally I feel like you were going where I was going to go next. Is we talked about analysis paralysis, and how, you and I were talking about how people are like, get stuck on what entity does it need to be in an LLC? But when you work with someone, you can ask those questions. You see how their business is structured. So you're learning about not only whatever, investment class you're working on, but you're also learning about how their business is set up specifically to serve this asset class. So again, giving you more confidence and knowing what to do to take that next step to go out solo.
Plus, those people will also share a lot of the mistakes they've made in regards to, okay, here's who you use for this, or here's who you use
Mhm.
for that, or here's who you had good luck with. So they give you a lot of those connections that, again, I think are priceless. That, I mean, the amount of
Time.
software connections and thing I've shared with people, to me, I've probably spent tens of thousands of dollars on useless stuff that I've told people, hey, don't use that because it's not worth it. And, trying to help them and do that good gesture of that good deed of providing them some input so it benefits them. So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Most people that, aren't in a professional real estate career, they're either blue collar, white collar, 9 to 5 individual, could be somebody, who works behind the desk, someone who works, manufacturing line, whatever the case may be. They saved up some money. What route do you think they should go if they want to be active? Because we've kind of already.
Yeah. I think that it depends on their two things, time and risk tolerance. And knowing that, I would probably go partnership of some sort, even if it's with someone else who's, new-ish to the industry, and you're both putting in less funds and splitting the work. So I don't know how great that would be if it's kind of like the blind leading the blind, but like I would definitely start with some sort of partnership if it were me. What about you?
I agree. And what I would tell people is the way to start, because that would be, oh, great, I know I need to start partnership. How to start if you're doing kind of a fix and flip or whatnot, I would go to local real estate groups. No matter what aspect of real estate, go to real estate groups, but find people in that space who are well known. So if you're looking for a contractor, find some of the private lenders and say, who's a developer or contractor you've worked with who has been very successful and paid you back, because the private lenders will tell you who and who not to. On the flip side, if you're kind of doing the lending side of things, basically have some conversations again, with, the contractors of, who some of the private lenders who you work with, who you liked, because they can share some of the stories on the private lending side. And also, again, share some of that experience on the note space. Note investing is kind of, it's a little different because in real estate, you have the lender and the person physically doing building, and notes is really just one person. Reach out to somebody that's in that space. Make sure if you want to do seconds, it's somebody who's done seconds, that do performing versus non-performing. There's a lot of different aspects of note investing, lending, subject to Facebook, Bigger Pockets, all great places, and just call 10 people. And maybe you might want to try doing a deal with 2 different people so you can get the differences between and learn from both.
Do you think there's any advantage from doing a deal with someone locally?
If you can get FaceTime with them, yes. Yeah. Yep, I do. If it's somebody who can meet for coffee or go pick their brain and really get to know them, yes. I just think meeting somebody in person versus over Zoom, I think it's just very different. I mean, I've been speaking with you on Zoom for a year. We have not met yet. Similar like Jamie and I, we met once, but it's, and again, we get along great, but I think, working together, I think it would actually, once we finally meet each other in September, I think it would just continue to strengthen that relationship.
Agree. I think meeting in person is the best way to go if you can make it happen. So kind of to wrap it up. So say someone is at that, ready to take that step. They don't really want to go fully passive. They want to do either a partnership or go solo. What would be like the 3 things that you think they need to do, or the 2 things that they need to do?
Next steps is somebody, and clarify, somebody wants to go.
Someone who's like, I've consumed all the content. I'm ready to invest in, I want to do a short-term rental investment. That's what I've landed on. That fits my criteria. So they've already figured it out, what they like their asset class. And they're like, okay, I think a partnership might be for me, or I'm debating between a partnership and going solo. What are the next steps you would say for them to take?
Yep. Find out who the players are in the market you're interested in. Get to network them, kind of like we talked about earlier about building that team. And really, that's that's multiple things right there, but that's really what I'd say you need to do. And it's lining up the resources to make sure you have everything in place. Sometimes if people rush and jump into something and they don't have a lot of their systems, everything behind them set up, it's a very big added burden and stress upon them. And when you add stress, people aren't thinking as logical, and that's where you can make some mistakes as well.
Yeah. I'd say my number one next step would be to network. Just network as much as possible, because yes, you'll meet the right players, but you also might meet someone who knows someone who is looking for a partner. Like you introduced me to people, for hard money deals. So
but there's smart networking too. And what I mean by that is, don't blast to 1,000 people.
yeah,
Find out.
genuine networking.
Yeah. Find
Oh,
out
geez.
who some of those key players are. So you can find out who are some of the real estate agents who focus on short-term rentals, because just like others who focus on rehabs, certain agents will go sell or with Sotheby's, who are selling the $2 million homes that, are for owner occupied. They're not a short-term rental person, or they're not like an REO person. So you want to find out who, and one way to do that is, again, Google can look it up. A lot of this information is pretty much readily available between Facebook groups and Bigger Pockets and through meetup groups.
Yeah. So really just for me, it comes down to smart networking, I guess you could say. But also I think you have nothing to lose by reaching out to someone. So yeah, no, I mean, the worst they can do is really not respond to you, but you'd be surprised, I feel, especially depending on the assets you're trying to invest in. The people are pretty receptive. And obviously don't do some generic email, make it personal. We could do a whole episode just on like networking properly. But any other thoughts?
No, I think, the last thought, actually, I do have one more, is, investing is a marathon, not a sprint. So don't rush into anything. We talked about that on leveraging on the last episode. But to play off of that, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So make sure you take the time. Most people do suffer analysis paralysis, but you also don't want to, run before you can walk. And you want to make sure you take the time to walk through your processes and the team and understand the comprehension of what the next steps are moving forward. Or if you don't, who to go to. So
okay,
that's
I'm
my
going
final
to
thought.
get oddly more specific with because I'm thinking like, if I was listening to this and someone told me to go network, I'd be like, okay, that's great. Like research Google and stuff. So I'm going to get a bit more specific with my advice. I would say if I was looking at, we'll say notes, because that's what we do. If I was looking into notes, I would go on Bigger Pockets. I would look at Facebook groups, and I would see who is commenting and adding value the most. And I would direct message them. I would probably do if I was trying to be marathon, not sprint it, I'd probably do 5 carefully crafted messages a day to each of those top different contributors for a few weeks until I've started having conversations with these people. And actual, not just, hey, I saw that you've been posting on Bigger Pockets. I am really interested in notes, would love to connect. Like that, to me, I'm sure people get messages like that all the time. I would add value or show that you've actually seen what they've been posting. Hey, I saw you commented on this post about notes and it's really interesting. I was actually curious about that, so
I'm laughing because I literally had 5 messages the other day on Bigger Pockets, and 4 of them were like, hey, I'm interested in getting notes, want to connect. Great. Yeah. Okay. There's no action item. One person said, I saw your post on this and I'm in a similar situation. Is it possible that we could connect? I'm like, yep, email me at this. Boom, done.
Yeah. So that would be my next step. Bigger Pockets, Facebook, see who the contributors are in your specific asset class, thoughtfully message 3 to 5 of them a day for a couple of weeks until you start having conversations and get to know them. And I feel like the rest kind of momentum just builds from there.
So the other thing, I'll just add one comment to that. Okay.
One more.
Is when you're looking at the people that comment, make sure it's the people who are actually commenting, adding value, not just selling their product. It's like, oh, well, I have this that you could go buy from me, or, whatever the case may be.
Well, and that comes back to finding those hidden gems, is the people who actually are just adding value to add value.
Yeah.
Are truly passionate about it. And sometimes they don't even want to mentor. Those are the best people to
Yeah.
find, people
Cool.
like you.
Don't give me too much credit.
Oh, anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of Creating Wealth Simplified. If you enjoyed the show, share it with a friend, subscribe, or leave us a comment. Until next time.
Thank you for joining Lauren and I on this episode of the Creating Wealth Simplified podcast. Each week, we bring you expert education, experience, and information in a digestible format to help you identify investment opportunities so you can build wealth through real estate and take action toward your financial goals. Enjoy the show, share with a friend, or subscribe to the show and leave us a review.